Any other old business? Mr. Watson.
Just a comment to be made on 2016-007, that ordinance. I requested that be written. Just explain to fellow council members why I requested that. It basically asks a simple question. It asks, whether or not council should be involved in raises of larger than 4%. If we look back to previous salary ordinances, the number was 8%. So language is not new when we look back at previous history. And it's just something I just wanted to comment on.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Clowney.
While we're discussing that, I'm a little confused because in that ordinance, it deals with wage increase for elected officials, and 2015-100 doesn't have anything to do with elected officials. $2015-100 is for non-elected officials. So I guess I'm confused. I'm asking a question.
I guess if that ordinance is something that you're going to give subsequent readings to, it might be worth a discussion. Might be worth taking a look at what the prior language was in the ordinance. Had to do with individuals that were hired or promoted and placed into a range, and then the subsequent review of the salary after that appointment was made. I think that's a significant difference between what is before you. I certainly would encourage council to take a look at that language further if that's the way you want to go. I don't think that as it's written, it's very functional. And I'd be happy to talk about that further with any of you or at a subsequent meeting.
Thanks.
Ms. Frischie.
Mr. Watson came up with a good idea after the first council meeting and contacted me trying to figure out a way to clear any miscommunication up in the future when passing a budget. And I brought to his attention that there was an 8% in the previous ordinance and several of the previous ordinances, but when the salary ordinance was changed on December 15th, that entire paragraph was removed. I'm not sure why. So the 4% was for salaried employees, Tom, with the ranges is what he was looking at, and that I seconded his motion to get legislation written by Don. I'm not sure if Don talked with Tom or Tim one-on-one to get a better understanding of what he was looking for in his ordinance, but it's for the salary ranges and putting that paragraph back in that was taken out because it used to be an 8% cap, and anything over that council needed to approve. I don't know if that helps clarify what his request is and what I seconded.
So you're talking about non-elected officials.
Correct.
That isn't what this is. This is no elected official.
Where do you see?
The first line, effective as of the date of passage, no elected
Well,
official.
I guess it needs to be modified, and maybe Don can communicate better with Tim on his request to clarify that. But it was for the salaried employees as it was, and before it was an 8% that was in the ordinance for many, many years, and it was removed in December 15th of this year, and then we had a sudden change in the budget. And that's what he was trying to fix. It wasn't trying to take anything away from Paul that got approved. It was trying to gain back some control of the purse strings with City Council. So maybe it should go to a committee of a whole for discussion, and maybe Tim and Don can get a better clarification on the verbiage being correct of what he was requesting. It's a good catch that you got there, Tom.
Well, I guess my question is, so it doesn't have anything to do with elected officials?
No, it's salary ranged employees.
Yep, my request was purely for the administrative side.
Okay, thanks.
So would it be objective then to simply reinstate the prior language as it was written in the prior ordinance? Is that what the objective would be? Or would you want that information to consider
I think
prior
one
to
thing,
the second reading?
yes, I think we should definitely consider that prior to the second reading. I was thinking, I know 8% was a historical number. I just came up with 4. I was thinking of something that's more reasonable if we're talking about increases that should, I believe that council should at least discuss it. And so that's why I requested legislation be written.
So this is a discussion about the salary ranges that we consider in a salary ordinance. Because if it's the salary ranges in the salary ordinance and we approve the salary ordinance, isn't the process of the approving of the salary ordinance giving our approval? Don't we have the discussions during the process of consideration of the salary ordinance? Or do we now need to then pass it and then tell ourselves that we passed it so we can approve it? I'm confused as to the intent because that's what our salary ordinance is for. And so there's some confusion here that says that council was totally unaware of salary range changes. We discussed it in our committee of the whole, specifically about the service safety director and the HR director and the change in the upper range. Why would you be surprised that somebody's paid in that range? There's no confusion on my part. I don't really understand the need for this ordinance 2016-007 or the confusion in this whole matter.
My intent is not to target the ranges. My intent is to target any increases within those ranges that is more than 4%. Does that clarify?
My question is, the original language was at 8%, correct? And it was taken out at some point in time. Why was it taken out?
We were looking and actually had problems with 2 individuals who we would have had issues with if they would not have agreed to work for that 8%. When we talk about management positions and the ranges and the salaries associated with that, I agree that the range is what is agreed to, and we work within a budget. It hamstrings us somewhat with some positions that are relatively hard to compete with if we are to deal with an 8% range. That's why we took it out. That feels like more of a decision for us administratively. You pass a budget, you tell us to get the job done. We have to make personnel decisions associated with that. To be honest, if you really feel like it's something you need to have in there, I'm not all that upset about putting it back in there. I was unclear as to the intent regarding the request. It really did just have some ramifications for us in conversations that we had with staff, and what we ended up doing is talking to them about staying on and doing something over multiple years.
So, Paul, in that situation, and I guess I'm just trying to understand, you had a situation where you're in negotiation with an employee that would have gotten greater than an 8% increase, and that would have, and if it had to go to council, it would have somehow hampered the conversation?
I guess more so from their perspective.
From their perspective?
Correct.
From the employee?
Correct.
They wouldn't want to get the opportunity to get a higher than 8% increase if council approved it?
We laid out for them what the process looked like.
So it was
We
a
said,
timing issue?
this is what we could do. And they said, well, I will live with this for this year, and the next year I'll be within the 8%. It's happened to us more than once. So we've worked within the rules, don't necessarily agree with them. We can continue to do so if you feel it's vital to operate that way.
I think the situation comes when we take someone who's an hourly employee and we promote them to management or a supervisory role to fit into one of these professional classifications. And when we move them into that role, they become an appointed position, so they no longer have their civil service protection. Two, they're not eligible for overtime, more than likely. And so they're missing out on the opportunity to generate income for their family via the overtime. And they could not have a job, depending upon, one thing or another. So I think what we were trying to do was to operate within the constraints that we had, but you want to, we're in the business of people, obviously, and we want to make sure that we have the most qualified people in those positions, people who are dedicated to this city, and not just necessarily because they feel like, it's the right thing to do, but because they're good at what they do, and we want them here, and they're competitive. And we want to make sure that we can compensate them properly. And so that's really what this discussion is all about, ultimately.
The ordinance was not to hinder on being able to hire an employee. It was just having better communication with council to approve a higher change. And I hope you can understand, Mayor, when you made that budget change at the last council meeting, and the fact that you removed the 8% out completely gave you free rein for a 22%. So you understand where I'm coming from. That's where it came from. After the council meeting, Mr. Watson thought, how can we improve that process? And his idea, not knowing, was to put a little bit of a woe on making some of these bigger changes. So he came up with 4%. Maybe it's something that needs to be discussed and go back to 8, or maybe there's some other verbiage that can take place. But I hope you understand that's where this process came from the way that the budget was passed at the last council meeting.
I guess now I don't know what to say. Is this coming back to committee for us to discuss? As of now, no. So it is at 4% as of now. It's only had a reading. Yeah, it's all right. So we'll have additional changes or opportunities to make changes. Yes. I mean, I don't understand why we aren't. My gut tells me no. I don't think anybody here wants to micromanage the staff, the administrator, the mayor, or anybody else. I certainly don't. And if we're living within the ranges and it was within the 8% rule, I personally don't have a problem with it. And I don't know whether we'll have a chance to have those types of discussions later on. I hope we do. Okay. I think 4% is rather restrictive. I don't want to be sitting here talking about 4% increases anytime we have a situation like this. Mr. Wolf, sir?
I've got a question about